Well, as I said a few minutes ago, this is the end of the church year. This is the end of the liturgical calendar. Next Sunday is Advent, and next Sunday we begin our journey to Christmas. This year is kind of special, and I always appreciate the fact that every once in a while, about every 4 or 5 years, rather than going right from Thanksgiving with all the banners and the fall theme to the next Sunday, all the Christmas trees being up, it just seems a little much for me too quickly. I like having this little extra time. It gives me a feeling of being able to kind of wrap up before I start again. But it is the end, and I was thinking and reflecting on that because in many respects we like endings. Endings can bring a sense of satisfaction to a job well done. Endings mean the conclusion of a project or a period or a phase and the start of something new and fresh and beginning. I mean, no matter what, people seem to enjoy the new year. They want to ring that in. It somehow brings them a sense of anticipation of better. So on one hand, we very much like endings. But on the other hand, there are many times we don't like endings. We don't like endings when they're abrupt. We don't like endings when they come not at our behest. We don't like endings when they feel out of control. And we have those as well. Endings to relationships, endings to life, endings to marriages that stop prematurely, endings to careers that are terminated involuntarily. And then we kind of don't know how we get to these places and to these points and these rooms with no apparent door to get out of. And it feels kind of like, you remember when little kids are on the playground and the game doesn't go the way they want to, and they're going from first to second base, and they see that they're out, and the child says, do-overs, I want a do-over. We get to those places where we would like to have a do-over. That spot that feels like a wall, like the end, perhaps the end of your rope. Well, our text this morning is taken from John, and John is very dramatic in his gospel record. Our text this morning is taken from the dramatic playing out of Jesus' trial. John gives just a glimpse of the part where Jesus goes before Caiaphas and Annas the high priest and is tried before the religious leaders. He is primarily focused on the second part where he's brought into the praetorium before the most powerful people of his time, or the representative of the most powerful person of the time, Pontius Pilate. And if you are one of those people, if you place yourself within this drama, or even within the audience watching this drama, there is a symphony that's taken place, a crescendo of the whole biblical gospel narrative that brings you to this point of what's going to happen next. The Sanhedrin has sentenced him and wants him executed. Jesus now stands before Pilate, and given Pilate's past track record, it's probably going to be the same. If you are one of those people who've been a part of the audience and the followers of Jesus, and you watch this drama come to its apparent climax, it had to feel like the end. The end. It's not the way we wanted it to turn out. This is not the way we hoped it would turn out. This is the way it's going to turn out. This is the end. What now? It's done. Have you ever been in that place? Have you ever been in that spot or predicament or quandary in your life where you've been moving and doing and living, and things seem to be directed in this way and going really well, and then all of a sudden the foundation collapses and the bricks tip over and you're at the end. You're at the end. It's not very comfortable. In fact, it's very uncomfortable. Because most of us would always like to believe there are options, there are paths, there are choices, and that every situation can be redeemed and every relationship made whole. But here we are. But what can I do now? What will happen from here? You ever been there? The curious thing is that it is precisely in these moments or places of discomfort, of lostness, where there are no more rabbits to be pulled out of our proverbial hats, when life is out of our hands and it just feels like the end and there's nowhere to go, it's out of our hands that we realize whose hands it's really in. Am I right? It is right at that moment when we have to admit we're not in control that we realize who just might be. And I'm not a believer in fatalism. I am not a subscriber to predestination, that is, that everything is just fixed and we are puppets. But I do believe that within life there is a flow, and there is a purpose, and the purpose is written on God's heart, waiting to be written on ours. And when we are in tune or in sync with the heavenly rhythm of this symphony of life, things go pretty well, and when we're not, when we try to grab the baton out of the director's hand, it seems like it gets to a sour end. Especially when life throws curveballs at us, and life will throw and has thrown curveballs at us. And in those times when it does, and what we think we need to do is grab the steering wheel so we can turn the rudder and get the ship righted to go in what direction? The direction we think it needs to go. You see, we perceive that we should be in control. But what I say to you, that unless we allow God to take control, the struggle just becomes harder and harder, and the way darker and darker, until there's nothing left in us. And we think that's a bad place, but in some ways it may be the best place. Because when there's nothing left in us, there's only one place to go. The place we should have been all the time. Trusting God. 20 years ago, I remember when my father died, which was a pretty dark time for me. Being a pastor of a church and preaching every week, people come to church seeking strength and guidance from you, and I didn't have it. I didn't have it. I would cry at the drop of a hat. Things had pushed me over. I didn't have it. And though trying to meet the expectations, I sought to climb out of the deep well I felt I was in. That's the way I would describe it, like a dark, deep well. Bloodying my fingers and my hands trying to climb up the steep rocks until I realized I couldn't do it. And when my prayer changed from God, I need help to get out of this well, when it changed to God, help me to see what is to learn in this well, that what I found was that the bricks began to dissipate and the wall just went away. Oh God, how do I sing your song in a foreign land? When we are in that place, interestingly enough, that's where we most closely meet God. It was a wise individual who said, when you are at the end of your rope, what you'll discover, or not, hopefully what you'll discover is that's where God is. In other words, when we stop overestimating our abilities, cease seeking to be in control, as though we ever really were, we discover that there's more to life than we can know or see. I mean, Jesus is before the great powers of his city and his world. Pilate, the representative of Caesar and Caiaphas, and yet they have no power over him. They have no power over him because he has put his trust in the power of something more. You see, and when you realize that there are powers at work that we can exhaustingly work against, to grab control, or work with, when we allow God to enter into our decision-making, into our tears as well as our joys, the walls begin to break down and doors will open. But this requires characteristics that we're not very good at. We like to be in control. And, in American society, we really don't like anybody to have control over us. This Christ the King, or this Christ, saying someone is a king or the Lord of your life means that somebody else has power over you and that you gladly give it, right? We're not so much about that. We can always vote you out. We're not good at that. We're not good at the characteristics we say we admire: patience, quiet, perseverance, trust, hope. And yet those are the very things that God says, if you're going to make me the Lord of your life, you got to live those. There's a story, probably some of you have heard it, but it seems to fit, of a gentleman who's hiking and he falls over a cliff, and as he falls over, he grabs the top of it, and in his desperation, he looks down and he screams, "Is there anyone down there? Is there anyone who can help me?" And this booming voice comes out of the heavens and says, "Let go! Let go!" And the man looks down and he says, Anybody else down there that can help me?" That's kind of the description of you. And I know it's a description of me. You see, we like to be in control or fool ourselves to think that we always can be. But not Jesus. And some would say, well, there's no trick to that. That's not even a comparison. Jesus knew how this whole drama was going to play out. Well, maybe so, but in my Christology, in my theology, I choose to focus on that notion and that prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus says, "Take this cup away from me." Because in that poignant moment, Jesus knows that sense of human desperation and fear that says, where is this going to end? God, it doesn't look like it's going to end very pretty. He too knew that sense, at least in my faith, he too knew that same place that I have known, the end of your rope. But he also knew trust in God. And despite any inflection of uncertainty, was able to put his life there and move on. Not because the immediate future suddenly became clear or easy or a free pass to go, but because he believed that when we allow God into our future, God can and will, as the African American saying goes, God will find a way out of no way. God will find a way out of no way. Or as the Apostle Paul discovered for himself, and then wrote, that is why we never lose heart. For it is God who said, "Let light shine even out of the darkness," who has shown in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. A way out of no way. Because our God is not a God of endings. Our God is not a God of dead ends. Our God is a God of beginnings, a God of hope, a God of promise, a God of resurrection. Though we may reach the end of our rope, what the faith story, the biblical story tells us is God's got a lot of rope left to let out. You just got to let go of where you're hanging on so you can grab a new part of it. If we allow God to unroll it and have the faith by which to take a hold of it, trusting that it will take us, God will take us, God will give us whatever we need, wherever we are led. Lord, it's getting to be desperate times. Why do you seem to delay in responding to those needs that I remind you of each and every day? In my mind, I know that you will come through in the end, but in my heart, emotions rise, and you know what? I struggle again and again. Help me at those times to give it again to you. Help me know deep in my heart that you can pull me through. That you fully understand exactly where I'm at. Those circumstances do not change. Help me to remember that in you I will not lack. That it's just a matter of timing and responding to our needs, to work through what needs doing to accomplish more than I could possibly see. So all that's left for me to do, the one thing that stands sure, is to place way more trust in you. Bottom line, nothing could matter more. And friends, that's what it means to say on this day that Jesus is King of Kings. That's what it means to say, or what it should mean to say, when we utter those words in liturgy and in prayer, you are the Lord of my life. I give it to you. Easier said than done. But remember, with God, it's never done. There's always more. May we have that faith that enables us to grow in our ability to trust, so that we can find the peace that is beyond human understanding and the happiness that doesn't come as a giddiness in life, but as a fullness in our living. That He may be Lord of our life, not just in what we say, but in how we live. Amen.